Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on this new session of the Sales Leadership Podcast. I'm here with Wajid Ali and myself, Simon Rodriguez. We look forward to sharing some of the insights about the sales journey and some of the experiences that we have accumulated, obviously, during our careers. I've been working in the field almost 20 years now, like different experiences and working in different organizations, and we look forward to sharing with you some of those insights. This session in particular is the second part of the initial one we started about the typical mistakes salespeople make, and we look forward to sharing the second portion of these mistakes, going into some of those stories and some of those typical mistakes we see and how to avoid them, which is I think is quite important. So with that, I'll share the floor here with Wajid for introductions, and we'll dive into the topics. Over to you, Wajid.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Good morning, everyone. So, Simon, thank you for the introduction. I think you set the frame real good here. My name, Wajid Ali. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada. Over 18 years of experience in both sales, technical sales, commercial leadership, and leadership in general. The purpose of these podcasts, as Simon said, is to share our knowledge, our experiences, and things that we have learned with the audience here, with the intent that we can add some value to your lives and we can contribute to your growth as well. So on that note, what we're going to do is we will jump in right into this topic, which is a continuation from our last week. And this is about the typical mistakes that most of salespeople do without even, I guess, recognizing it or paying attention to it, because we are also overwhelmed in our day-to-day that we even sometimes these things get overlooked. So let's talk about the first one. And I think we had a complete podcast on this one, but since it's part of these mistakes identification process, so we'll touch upon this one real quick, and then we'll move on to the next one. And the point I wanted to bring here is lack of or neglecting building the relationships with your customers, with your potential customers, with your existing customers. And what happens typically is that most of us salespeople are driven by orders or revenue. So once we get the order, once we get the purchase order or the work order from our customers, we tend to move on to next customers, and we forget the key essential thing, which is building a relationship with your existing customers. What is it that we can do? Or what is it that you would recommend, Simon? Because I know you have led salespeople, you have led sales teams. What is it that you would recommend for salespeople so that they can focus on this essential part of the sales journey?
Yes, the main thing in my experience is focusing on the type of relationship and differentiating between strategic and transactional. Exactly to your point, like if you have a transactional mindset in which your only focus is that particular sales at hand, you might succeed at that point, but you're failing to build that strategic long-term relationship that is going to continue nurture the organization, right, or your business. The key in my view is focusing on building that long-term strategic relationship with that customer, with that prospect. And as you share, like something you go over time, right, beyond a particular transaction, beyond a particular interaction. So how can you build that sustainable relationship that it's gonna benefit the customer, it's gonna benefit your organization, and that's the main thing. And some of the mistakes, as you highlighted, what it is, yeah, we have obviously numbers to meet, we have metrics and goals to achieve, and sometimes the mistake we see is people tend to go into transactional, so close, so objective that they lose sight of the strategic portion of the relationship. And I think to your point, it's, yeah, we can be transactional in a way that we focus on the opportunity at hand, but without forgetting building that relationship along the way. So I'll guess my point here will be the balance on yes, focusing on what needs to be done, but let's build that relationship as we work through it. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably,
So what happens if, the question would be, or the argument would be, what happens if you don't build that relationship? What is the loss for the
yes.
salespeople, right?
Yeah,
What are
and
they
I think,
losing?
yeah, I think you're losing a big opportunity, and that's a good point. I think you're missing on a great opportunity to build a sustainable relationship over
Right.
the the long term, right? Because
Right.
and we know that in most cases, that initial customers that becomes that long
Yeah.
term customer is the one that will keep
Right.
obviously. So yeah, I think that's kind of the missed opportunity to your point. But yeah, I'm curious, is that something, and that's kind of a sharing my perspective, but is that something
Yeah.
that in your view, what's the main mistake there? Is it like people will focus on, okay, let's close this opportunity at hand, and they just forget about the long term? What do you think is missing there right now from why people is
Yeah.
making this mistake?
Yeah. I will build up on what you said. It's that sustainable business. Of course, you're missing on sustainable growth with that particular customer. But at the same time, it may happen that you may never receive a purchase order from that customer because they don't need your product or solution anymore. But if you don't build up the relationship, what you're losing is you're losing, call it a champion for yourself, right? That customer can become a champion, a proponent of yours, and they can go, without you knowing, they can go out and they can refer you, your product, your solution to other people. So if you have built up that relationship, if you have built up that relationship with your existing customers and you focus on this one and you don't ignore it, you don't neglect it, that particular customer, client, company, business, whatever it is, they will become your champions, your proponent, and your promoters without you knowing it. So it's that thing that you're losing as well, right?
But that's a great point, Wajid, and yeah, that's exactly key as well. Because even if that customer, perhaps for any particular reason, they don't have any upcoming projects or opportunities in the next year or two, but if they see you as a strategic trusted advisor, regardless of whether or not they have an opportunity, they will be happy to refer, obviously, your company, your organization, your services to a different or to a peer organization. Or yeah, so I think that's another key component, right? So not necessarily like you will keep building on business with that customer, but also you build that level of credibility and trust that I'm not just here to close this particular deal and that's it. I'm here to build a sustainable relationship. So I think
Right.
that's
Right. Thanks, Simon. So let's move on to the next one, and then I guess we'll close it on the last one. But this one is, call it the second last of what we have identified, and this one we call it not closing the sale, right? So we do all these efforts. We go through the entire sales journey with our customer. We become their trusted advisors. We build up relationships and whatever, all these points that we discussed. But now the point comes to close the sale. And most of us, when we're at that point, we start feeling, I guess, for the lack of better term, we're not prepared or we are not trained enough how to close the sales. And what happens is that, this can happen for a variety of reasons, but if you're not there to show that you're adding enough value to your customer, all those efforts that you have had in the past is not going to help you close the sale. So make sure, what customers do is they don't care about, to be very blunt here, they don't care about your product, they don't care about your service, they don't care about your solution. They only care about their pain. They only care about how you can get through that pain, how you can help them, so that you can take that pain away from them and provide your solution can actually become a solution for their day-to-day pain that they're going through. So what I'm saying is that if you don't understand this entire philosophy, it's hard to say. It's hard to close that sale. What are your thoughts on this point, Simon?
Certainly, we did. I think that's a critical stage. If you look at any sales process, the pretty much the closing stage is a critical one, right? Because to your point, it doesn't really matter if you did a great job through the sales process, but you're not focused on closing, right, or prepared to close. And I think in my experience, the main thing that I have seen is not knowing how to guide the customer to that closing stage. We know that closing requires from basic things like signing a purchase order, doing some diligence, documentation. And sometimes what I've seen is if we don't have a clear understanding of what the process for closing that the particular opportunity is, we fail to obviously to close the loop, right, and complete that sales process. So it's so essential, so important that we know exactly what's needed so we can guide the customer through that process and say, okay, well, this is the end-to-end process to the journey to the project itself. So I think it's essential for us as a salespeople to master that end-to-end process from starting prospecting all the way to closing. What is it that I need to close this opportunity? Call it documentation, approvals, reviews, etc. But being prepared to close through that, and that will imply negotiation as well. I think one of the mistakes we see is some people will avoid some of the negotiations at the end, which is part of closing, and that's where we fail to your point, right? Not closing the sale, and then it can fall through the cracks. So it's important to be prepared to negotiate if needed and have all the documentation at hand. So with that, maybe I think one quick kind of reference story, and that will take us to the next mistake, what it will be. I've seen occasions in which people do a great job, like going through the whole process, but then they fail to close, right? And obviously they're not able to close, then the customer goes in a different direction. Now, that's obviously a mistake that you need to learn from and use it as an opportunity. Next time around, you come prepared to go through that process. Now, the last point we have is not learning from mistakes, right? And I'm curious about your perspective. What's your experience, and how do you think, because it's all about learning, I think you get more value from mistakes, from learning opportunities. That's the way I see it, that from success. So what's your take on that, and why it's so important that we're open to learn from mistakes and typical mistakes we have highlighted today?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, and perhaps it's not only sales people. I think it's perhaps a human nature. In most of the cases, we tend not to learn from our mistakes, and we keep repeating our mistakes one way or the other, right? Again, because first thing is we don't even realize that we are making mistakes. That's where the starting point is. So once you realize that, hey, as we described through these podcasts from episode 1 to this final episode, as we highlighted some of the mistakes, first thing is to realize that, hey, these are the mistakes during my sales process. Once you have that realization, the second thing is how can you...
I think we lost you there for a second. We did.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think
you're back now. Yes.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay, thanks, Simon. So what I was saying is that once we realize the mistakes, the next phase is to not repeat these mistakes, to learn from these mistakes. And as we have seen throughout our career, that the best way you can learn from your mistakes is to take some time to reflect upon what went wrong. And then perhaps, as anyone else, as most of us, we may need some help, some guidance, some perhaps leadership guidance or mentorship, where people can come, or we can go and sit with them and tell them that, hey, it seems like I'm having these difficulties. How can I get through these, not repeating these mistakes again? It's all, as human, we can overcome any mistakes, any shortcomings. The only thing is the realization, how quickly you realize it, and what is the strategy that you make from that realization, not to repeat those mistakes. There are multiple ways of doing it. On this short podcast, I think it will be hard to cover all those essential strategies, but to have it a blanket one statement strategy, I would say just get back to your drawing board and reflect upon what went wrong, and then from there you can start building your process. What are your last parting thoughts on this one, Simon? And then perhaps you can wrap it up as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing those insights there, Wajid. I think it's going from mistakes and learning from them is it's a great opportunity. It's a learning opportunities, right? And as we highlighted at the beginning of the podcast of the session, is we know sales is a challenging, obviously, profession undertaking, but understanding what are the typical mistakes and avoiding them, that will certainly help salespeople improve their sales performance and increase their success. So my final message here for everyone is to look into some of these mistakes that we commonly make and try to avoid those and learn from those opportunities. So with that, I'll think we'll see you in the next session, and we look forward to the next one. Any final thoughts, Wajid, on your end?
No, thank you. I would just thank you. Thanks the audience. Thank you for being with us here. And as Simon said, feel free to share your comments, your thoughts. What are the mistakes that we couldn't identify during this podcast? Feel free to leave those in the comments. We may cover those in our upcoming sessions. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thanks a lot.